The rejection notice felt heavier than I thought paper could be. The committee had convened for the end-of-term portfolio review, my last chance to justify myself as a sound design major. Professor Saito didn't even look in my direction as he set the forms down, eyes already moving past me, out the window where the quad's ginkgo trees shuddered in the wind. There were 4 other students in the room, each in their own cage of silence, but I knew as I unfolded the paper with shaking fingers that I'd been the only one cut. Ueno-kun, Professor Saito cleared her throat, voice clipped deliberately neutral. Your project lacked focus. We were looking for traditional tonal progression, and what you gave us, she hesitated over the word, settling on the most diplomatic term possible, was experimental to an unworkable degree. I wanted to explain how I'd recorded the Yamanote line rattling between Okachimachi and Ueno at midnight, how I'd layered that with a street vendor's whistle warped until it sounded like longing, how the whole piece was a city's heartbeat if you just let yourself hear it. But none of them looked interested, none of them even looked up. By the time I left the cramped committee room, the sky had begun to seep neon. Humiliation wrapped itself around my chest, cold and slick, pressing each breath back down. I could hear more than see the other students in the corridor, short sneers, muffled snorts. They didn't even try to wait for me to be out of earshot. I walked home along the Sumida River, each footstep echoing with all the things I should have said. Please just listen, let the sounds explain, give it a minute more, but the city paid me no mind, so why should they? When I told my mother I'd been thrown out of the sound design program, she didn't blink. Just sipped her tea, blowing on the surface to cool it. My father's jaw worked tighter. He stared at the television, its audio just a mosquito whine under the sports analysis. So, he said finally, you'll find a normal job now. I stared into my miso soup. I saw for a second myself reflected in the oily swirl, mouthful of words, none safe to say. There's still voiceover work, I ventured, voice small, almost apologetic, and podcasts need sound people more and more. It's just clicking buttons, my aunt cut in. She lived with us, didn't pay rent, but ran the kitchen like a general. All that expensive university, and for what? Why can't you choose something people respect? My mother's lips pressed thinner, she didn't argue. She just stirred her tea, gentle, like the answer might float to the surface. The next few days blurred together, tiptoeing around Dad's anger, listening to the cough of the neighbor's old TV through the paper walls, scrolling through endless dead-end job postings. I felt the weight of being unnecessary, all my dreams shrinking to something brittle in the pocket of my chest, but I couldn't give up, not even if it embarrassed me. You're deluding yourself, my brother told me over a rare dinner at home. No one even hears that stuff unless it's broken, just let it go. I swallowed steam, the sting of broth on my tongue. If I gave in, there'd be nothing left. Getting work after that was relentless. I took editing gigs for local commercials, the sort of jobs where the brief was add cheerful music and make sure the duck quacks sound funny. I spliced together cartoon sound effects until my ears rang with fake splashes and pixelated footsteps. Most of it was done in a shared co-working space above a brothel in Kabukicho. The walls were paper-thin, the air always faintly sweet with cologne and cigarettes. Every so often, a gaijin DJ from the club next door thumped past, nodding like we were all in on some grand joke. Even my agency's supervisor, he always put the word in quotes as if apologizing for existing, told me the same thing week after week. Try something easier, editing pays faster than creation. Dreams are for rich kids. Tokyo spread above me, acres of possibility clogged with the white noise of everyone else's ambition. In late autumn, when the skies got sharp and glass blue, I started walking through Aoyama Cemetery on my way home, letting boot heels drum against ancient stone. I'd play back the city's daily rhythms on my phone, lingering over the tape of a shrieking train gate or synth-smooth elevator chimes. I tucked everything away for later. One day I told myself someone would listen. But the rejections kept coming. More agencies, more creative studios that wanted 100 gigabytes of background noise but never my name. I made enough to pay rent for a shoebox room above a ramen shop in Shinakubo, where the only window looked down at a tangle of electrical wires and the sour scent of boiling bones. Home visits were the worst. My relatives, 3 floors up in a Nakano apartment, slippers lined up for every occasion, paraded my failings like an Olympic ceremony. My cousin Tomo, with his law school haircut and phone full of market data, made a little show of sending me job listings for proper careers during dessert, still making sound effects. Tomo would smirk, nudging his sister. You could just do that on your phone, you know. I learned to say less, just smile, push the rice around the bowl, hurry home to my headphones. Nights were the hardest. The city's voice, tires on wet pavement, vending machines exhaling warm air, hundreds of conversations rising and falling, felt like a choir that wouldn't let me in. I'd drift off to recordings of back alley rainstorms, heart pounding with the knowledge that everyone thought I was ridiculous. But patience becomes a kind of armor. After a year, something started shifting. I landed a freelance gig with a small indie filmmaker, Noriko, whose apartment doubled as an editing studio. She wanted her film to sound like breathing alone in Tokyo, lonely but alive. The first time we screened my cut of the opening sequence, Noriko looked at me with startled relief. It's like, she hesitated, hands fluttering, like you know the city's flavor just in sound. We worked together late into the night, layering the scratching of tram lines with the hush of closing doors, turning silence into mood. When the film Kuchibu** got a festival nod, Noriko insisted I attend. Even when the applause rolled through the small screening hall in Shibuya, a part of me kept bracing for laughter. But in the dark, strangers turned to me and spoke softly, like they'd found something precious in the soundscape. One old man said, "You made Tokyo into a person I recognized." That praise stuck with me, a small warm stone I kept touching when the world flickered cold. It was enough to get noticed, gradually. More indie directors, a few sound art installations, workshops where students actually listened. Still, my family didn't see it as success. Art film, my father scoffed when I tried to explain, that's just hobby work. Worse were the neighborhood family friends, the ones who spotted me on slow walks home, newspaper folded under their arms, clucking their tongues. All this time and still nothing solid. Shouldn't you take the civil service exam just to be safe? I smiled, let their words pass over me. My patience was now a habit. I lived with the public humiliation, the private hope. Then came Hikaru's game **. It started as another blind audition. The studio emailed a generic request for a distinctive atmospheric palette for an open-world puzzle game. But when I read the pitch, gameplay literally turned on shifting city sounds, puzzles solved by decoding urban noises, I knew I wasn't just applying for a job. I was staking my soul. I recorded obsessively for weeks. Traffic signals, rooftop birds on a laundry line, the high-pitched trill of taxi radios bleed mixed with the drag of monorails. My submission pulsed with memory. The soft click of vending machines, a rainstorm caught beneath a shrine eve, distant fireworks on riverbanks. I didn't sleep. For the first time, I felt pride unashamed of fragility. The acceptance email arrived in spring, stamped with the iconic Sakura Games logo. They wanted me as lead sound designer, full credit attached. When I called my mother, voice still hollow with disbelief, she murmured, "Congratulations, Jun," but the silence afterward was full of questions she wouldn't say aloud. I buried myself in the work. Hikaru's game * became my obsession. Months of meetings, late-night play tests, the delicate art of evoking emotion through invisible music. Sakura's office was all frosted glass and company slippers, a maze of coffee-stained notepads and whispering programmers. The director, a kind-eyed expat named Jenny, taught me how to trust my intuition and defend every choice. For the first time, I wasn't fighting for permission. I was crafting the city's story, moment by moment, chord by chord. When deadline panic made everyone else unravel, I played them the night market soundtrack. A blend of festival drums and whispered laughter dissolving into dawn, people wept. Even the testers, sleep-deprived to delirium, thanked me. When the game launched, it didn't just sell well, it exploded. Reviewer after reviewer mentioned the sound design, full paragraphs devoted to the way the city seemed to breathe *, how even the smallest alley murmured with possibility. The Tokyo Philharmonic asked for a suite based on my work. I was invited to GDC in San Francisco, my first flight outside Japan. Sitting in the audience, hands tightly folded, I listened as the MC announced the Best Audio Design Award. And when Hikaru's game * was called, when my name swelled out to the front of the darkened theater, I finally let myself feel proud, not loud, just proud enough not to flinch. My phone vibrated with messages from old friends, distant relatives, even former classmates, all those closed doors now opening, but what I wanted most was to return home, not to spite them. Just to prove to myself and to them that ridiculous could mean real *. The prodigal son returns with far less drama than the stories ever promised. I asked my parents if I could cook dinner for the family. My mother said yes, surprised, but she texted my aunts and cousins so there'd be a full table. Dad only grunted when I said I'd bring something, just yourself is fine, no gifts. I spent the afternoon in our tiny kitchen, sleeves rolled up, jacket draped over the old shoebox speakers I'd built in high school. My hands shook as I stirred miso, counting heartbeats, breaths. By the time I heard my aunts in the jenkin, slippers rustling, I'd set the table the way my grandmother used to. Ceramic bowls, lacquer trays, one worn porcelain sake set. Dinner went quietly. My brother poked at his rice. Dad stared at the bento box I'd brought back from the Sakura offices, as if even rice could betray him. My cousin Tomo eyed me, smirking but said nothing. It was my mother who asked halfway through, "What's the project you've been working on? I saw you mentioned in some magazine." I reached into a worn canvas bag and pulled out a copy of Weekly Jump Asterisk, the one with a glossy spread on Asterisk Hikaru's game. My name was there, centerfold with a quote. Yuno Juncraft's Tokyo's Soul Through Sound. Tomo laughed. That's some fancy PR. Anyone can get into that magazine if they know the right people. Patience, always patience. I set my phone on the table, screen angled so everyone could see. In one clear motion, I opened the video, a recording from the Game Music Live event at the Suntory Hall 2 nights before. The Tokyo Philharmonic, 100 musicians strong, performing the suite I'd written, my city symphony, bleeding with every sound that once made me a joke. The audience, a crowd of 2,000 strangers, roared as my name flashed gold on the screen above the stage. For a moment my family just stared, mouths parted, messages half-written dying Medea. My father's hand trembled on his chopsticks. He tried for a joke, even the Philharmonic, but I saw the truth in his eyes, blinking fast. My mother covered her mouth, tears building. Tomo said nothing. Even my aunt looked at me differently, her usual sharpness softened with uncertainty. We sat that way, the sound of applause filling the silence that had hung around me for years, almost a benediction. Outside, the city's pulse drifted in through the window. Distant trains, wind in the trees, someone's radio spilling jazz onto the night air. Later, when the rest of the family trickled home, my mother stood beside me at the sink, carefully drying each dish. "You waited a long time," she said quietly. "I'm sorry we didn't listen sooner." I shrugged, fighting the unfamiliar ache in my throat. "You had every right to worry." She smiled, a little sad and a little proud. "You always heard more than we did, from the beginnings." Walking home that night, the city felt different, like an orchestra tuning up, every note ready to surge but waiting for my cue. Even the skeptics, even the hours of ache and doubt had shaped the song. Every humiliation had only sharpened my patience, made the music that much richer. I passed through familiar streets, alleyways that once scalded me with memory, now humming with small glory. The ramen shop neon burned steady. Above, the starlight was swallowed by skyscraper haze, white and endless. I stopped, closed my eyes, and listened, not for permission but for belonging. At last my city sang back to me, note for note, a truth so clear it didn't need to be spoken, and this time they were all finally listening.